And good morning, everyone. And can I start by complimenting Board B on the fantastic work you've been doing from the very beginning of Brexit and the strong leadership and support you've been providing to the industry, which is reflected in the update here this morning and obviously the very strong progress that's been made by suppliers over the last few years. Like everyone else, Musgrave has been planning for Brexit for quite some time now. We've actually been working with many of you for over 2 years. We're still no clearer, obviously, at this point on the final outcome, so our approach continues to be to plan for the worst case scenario. At this point, that's a no-deal exit on the 31st of October. And we believe that if we're prepared for the worst possible outcome, we can adjust our plans to cope with all other scenarios. It's important, I think, to say from the outset that while Brexit is a major challenge, we're confident that as an industry, we will adapt and continue to thrive. We all remember, I'm sure, back to 2009, where we saw a fundamental reshaping of the retail landscape in Ireland as the recession hit home. We have a track record of resilience, and I've no doubt that we will rise to the challenge of Brexit and emerge stronger than before. So over the next kind of 20 minutes or so, I'm going to outline how we in Musgrave are planning for Brexit, the potential impacts on our business, the areas of concern for us, and our plans to emerge successfully from the transition. For those not so familiar with Musgrave, we are a 140-year-old Irish family-owned business with a rich heritage in food retailing and wholesaling. We operate in the retail, wholesale and food service markets across the island of Ireland and in Spain, serving a very broad customer base. And we've recently established a business exporting Irish food. In retail, we operate the SuperValu and Centro brands across the island of Ireland, along with Daybreak in the Republic of Ireland and Mace in Northern Ireland. We're also a key player in the food service market through our Marketplace and Arús food brands, again across the island of Ireland in this market. And we recently acquired the Donnybrook Fair business here in Dublin. Hopefully, many of you are familiar with, and even better, addicted to, Frank and Honest Coffee, which is a brand we established less than 3 years ago and is now the best-selling coffee in Ireland. The shape of our business and the number of channels that we operate in is really important in the context of Brexit in terms of the implications for Musgrave and also for our approach to planning for a post-Brexit future. We describe our purpose in Musgrave as growing good business. Growing good business is about long-term, sustainable, profitable growth for Musgrave and our partners, but it's also about being a force for good, supporting the development of vibrant local economies and thriving communities and doing the right thing by the environment. Growing good business puts growth and innovation at the heart of what we do, and while Brexit is a challenge right now, it doesn't distract us from our long-term commitment to growth. As Tara and the Minister said earlier, there will be life after Brexit. While the fundamentals of the economy are strong, there's no doubt that growth will slow in the event of a hard Brexit. We already saw a loss of consumer confidence in Q1, driven by the uncertainty surrounding Brexit at that point. We're likely to see a repeat of this again as Brexit becomes closer, from a consumer who remains cautious and is price sensitive, with the recession very much still fresh in her mind. Consumers see cutting back on their grocery spend and on eating out as tangible means to reduce household spend. So there's no capacity for Brexit to drive inflation to the consumer. Through our various brands, we feed 1 in 3 people in Ireland every day. And in this context, we take our role in anticipating and helping to minimise the level of disruption from Brexit in this market very seriously. Musgrave is in a unique position in the Irish market, and we share the Brexit challenge with our supply base in a unique way. The reason for this is, unlike many of our competitors, we're focused only on food, and our business is primarily based on the island of Ireland. Food is the eye of the storm when it comes to Brexit and Irish business, and Musgrave and our suppliers have a huge interdependency in ensuring that together we're as prepared as we possibly can be. In Musgrave, our absolute priority is to minimise the impact of Brexit on shoppers, support our retailers and food service partners, and protect our joint business with suppliers. Our goal is to ensure that consumers are not impacted and that our retail and food service partners and our suppliers can plan the development of their businesses with certainty. With this goal in mind, we've been very proactive in planning for Brexit from the start. Given our role in this market, we decided to take a leadership position and have been systematically planning for Brexit and working with many of you to prepare for a no-deal worst-case scenario over the last 2 years. Regardless of how Brexit ends up and what kind of outcome we end up with, we set 3 clear objectives from the outset, and these have been our guiding stars throughout our planning. These are firstly, to maintain full availability to our customers and consumers. Secondly, to ensure there's no disruption to the offer in terms of range, promotions or new lines. That is basically, we want our consumers to see no difference on our shelves. And thirdly, to minimise price inflation to the consumer. Obviously, easy statements to make, but clearly not so easy to achieve. Early on, we decided to keep things simple, and as I say, rather than plan for a number of different scenarios, we decided to focus on a hard no-deal Brexit only, on the basis that if we are prepared for the worst, we'll cope with all other outcomes. Having done a lot of analysis early on, it was clear that there are 3 areas of potential impact for us: tariffs and non-tariff costs, supply chain efficiency, and maintaining consumer choice. And these are the areas that we focused on from the outset. Let me take you through each of them in turn. First, tariffs and non-tariff costs. For example, customs and SPS procedures and delays at the border, everything we've talked about this morning, all of these have potential to drive significant cost inflation. We are the biggest supporter of Irish food and drink, and our preference is always to buy Irish where we can. 100% of our fresh meat, poultry, milk, eggs and core fruit and veg in season is Irish, and Irish suppliers of both brands and own brand account for a high share of most of our categories in our stores. However, a lot of the big brands on Irish supermarket shelves come from the UK, in areas like biscuits, confectionery, breakfast cereals, ice cream, ambient food, soft drinks. Most of those key brands actually are manufactured or come from the UK. The biggest impact from tariffs is clearly in those categories with a high level of UK import and high tariff rates. For example, in a category like biscuits, the majority of brands are manufactured in the UK, and in the WTO scenario, they would attract tariffs on average of about 16%. If this tariff was passed on in full to the consumer, you would see your favourite biscuit, the price of your favourite biscuit, increasing from $2.99 currently to $3.32 post-Brexit. Obviously, a totally unacceptable level of inflation for the consumer. Of course, tariffs don't just apply to finished goods, but also ingredients used by Irish producers. So take something like sugar or flour, which are both sourced from the UK and coming in huge volumes every day from the UK. So to date, we've taken action in 2 areas. We've resourced products away from the UK and considered where new products are manufactured before we list them. And secondly, we have, and probably more importantly, we've engaged extensively with our suppliers to find ways to take costs out of the end-to-end supply chain, so the tariffs do not have to find their way fully through to the consumer in price. While these go some way to addressing the issue, there's clearly a lot more work to do here. The second key impact is on the efficiency of our supply chain. Over the last 10 years, driven by the recession, our supply chain has become really lean, efficient and just in time. And I think, as most of you know, most multinational suppliers don't actually hold any stock in this market at this point. Instead, they ship from their UK distribution centres into our warehouses every day in Cork, Dublin and Belfast. And that's the same for the rest of the market. Brexit will undoubtedly make this supply chain less efficient and more costly. There will be a need for higher stock holding, for longer lead times and earlier forecasting of demand. And obviously for fresh product, there's also a risk of shorter shelf life. To fully understand where products are manufactured, we've mapped our supply chains with suppliers, including their route to market, whether that's direct, consolidated in the UK or delivered via the UK land bridge. And based on this insight, we've identified changes that we will implement in the event of no deal, including avoiding the UK land bridge and stock holding in Ireland. However, as Tara and the Minister said earlier, the land bridge will remain a key transit route into Ireland. So it's imperative that government ensures that Dublin Port is ready to comply with the new regime from day one post-Brexit. We would encourage Irish suppliers to map their supply chains for raw materials and finished goods and make decisions on what changes they would make well in advance of Brexit Day to avoid or to minimise disruption and cost. In Musgrave, we have a very specific Island of Ireland supply model in food service. We have a number of contracts with food service chains on the island of Ireland that we supply on an Island of Ireland basis, and we also supply a lot of our food service needs in Northern Ireland from our Dublin base. Our customers expect us to be Brexit ready and provide a seamless solution, and they're clear that they cannot let additional costs as a result of Brexit flow through to price. So we do understand the challenges that you are facing from your customers, including Musgrave. At this point, there's no clarity on whether the UK commitment to no tariffs, no customs, no requirements on products of animal origin for 12 months that was announced back in March, whether that will also apply in October. So again here, we're preparing for the worst and hoping for a better outcome. So we're preparing to be ready for all procedures applying from the 1st of November. That means system changes, Intrastat codes, customs agents, AEO status all in place for that date. We're concerned with the additional costs involved in customs and potential border delays, as well as new changes or new charges for veterinary certification from December, if that's required by the UK government. So we have to do everything collectively across the supply chain to minimise this impact. The third area of challenge for us is maintaining consumer choice. And as I've said, our absolute priority in Musgrave is to minimise the impact of Brexit on our shoppers. For us, this means no reduction in our range, no dilution in value for money, and maintaining the current pace of innovation and new product launch. There is a risk, however, that Brexit-driven costs, operational inefficiencies, and regulatory divergence could have an impact on the range available from multinational suppliers. If there's divergence in areas like food standards and labelling, for example, and the UK decides to go its own way and no longer aligned with the EU, it may not be commercially viable for some suppliers to manufacture small volumes, especially for the Irish market. In the case of fresh product with very short shelf life, any delays at the border or anything that makes supply unreliable, again, could make these lines unviable as well. So while we source the majority of these ranges within the Irish market, there are some brands that come from the UK, and we believe that this offers an opportunity for Irish suppliers, particularly in areas of chilled and prepared foods. And I think that came through quite clearly in the Brexit Barometer. What I've talked about so far is the longer term implications of Brexit and how we plan to address them so that we maintain the current offer and minimise any cost impact of Brexit. However, again, as we've heard extensively this morning, the immediate challenge we all face now is a no-deal exit at the end of October. We, I think, collectively were well prepared for just this scenario at the end of March, and it's now our intention to get back to that same level of preparedness at the end of October. However, I would say that the end of October is the worst possible timing for our industry in terms of a hard Brexit. Obviously, it presents significant challenges as we head into the most important trading period of the year. So, in Musgrave, we're now going to do the following. We're going to work with suppliers to build stocks in the Republic of Ireland and in Northern Ireland well in advance of October 31st. This means for us and suppliers that we need to acquire additional warehouse space if that's required to build those stocks. Irish producers who rely on imported ingredients or packaging need to build sufficient stocks of these items to see them through a period of disruption, and who knows how long that would last. And then collectively, we need to be fully prepared to comply with EU customs and SPS rules, again to avoid any delays on the 1st of November. But it's not all bad news, and again I think Tara highlighted the silver cloud earlier. You know, Irish suppliers have a natural advantage and should be fully prepared to leverage this opportunity. In the short term, that will arise if there's any disruption or border delays or loss of shelf life on imported product. And in the long term, obviously, if tariffs on imported product make Irish product naturally more competitive. To be ready, my advice to Irish suppliers is to challenge your supply chain to drive efficiency and leanness, to continue to innovate, again very much stressed by Tara as well, particularly in the whole area of chilled and prepared foods, and to seek early commitments from your customers who will be very keen to have security of supply. As I said at the beginning, Brexit is a major challenge, but I have every confidence that as an industry we will emerge from the challenge and continue to grow. In Musgrave, we have big ambitions and we're looking to the future, and our innovation agenda provides an abundance of opportunities for Irish suppliers. In quality, fresh and local food, we all know the Irish consumer has never been more discerning, and she's trading up to better quality meat, fish, fruit and veg, bakery, looking for quality products, new varieties, full traceability and clear provenance. So, for example, in Super Value, we're further stepping up our focus on quality Irish meat. In health and sustainability, today's consumer is making a clear connection now between her own health and that of her family and the health of the planet. She's looking for healthier alternatives, natural ingredients, clean decks, vegan, organic, and she wants to live more sustainably and expects business to step up and do a lot of the work for her. We're all aware that this agenda is obviously moving at pace. You only have to look at how quickly the plastics challenge has taken off. And thirdly, inconvenience. With full employment, smaller households, urbanisation, consumers are cooking less and they're eating out and ordering in more. And they're looking for convenient solutions across all day parts. We see endless opportunity for modern, high-quality food solutions that are also healthy and sustainable. We often say that our Centra stores are unrecognisable now versus a few short years ago, with Centra very much responding to these emerging trends. And we say Centra is actually more like a New York deli now than a traditional convenience store. In preparing for Brexit, we've been very careful to develop rigorous plans so that we can cope with Brexit while also keeping the business focused on growth. So we're operating parallel agendas to ensure that we're both set up for the short-term challenge and continuing to innovate and drive long-term growth. A difficult balancing act, but something we're really focused on. So that's a high-level summary of how we're preparing for Brexit in Musgrave. I hope you found it useful, and I look forward to meeting many of you at the break. Thank you.